Okay. Shall we start with a meditation then? Hi, everyone. Good evening for me. Good morning for you, wherever. It's our last session together with me. So there will be a lot of conclusions and some review this evening. And I think, first of all, I will just do a nice mindfulness meditation and then a reminder of the different topics. And I'm hoping that this evening I can receive your input more so that I'm not talking so much, and that you can, and then we can have discussion and I can respond to you. Okay. We can set our motivation. Why have you come to this session? Is there anything in particular? Is it just a weekly boost? What's going on for you? Taking some deep breaths, letting go of any tension you're carrying and relaxing into your environment. And as we breathe out, we feel the body becoming softer and looser. And along with the body, our mind also becomes softer and looser. Focus on the breath. And we'll just do some gentle mindfulness of the breath as we settle into a nice, clear experience of spaciousness. And thoughts are just distractions. Let them go. Pay them no attention. Rest in the spaciousness. So let's review the main concepts that we've considered over the past 6 weeks. So our starting point was the ego, what makes a healthy ego, and how it is working with this aspect of ourselves that enables us to develop spiritual qualities. And particularly the trickiness of the ego, how it tricks us to thinking that we're right and others are wrong, that we're more important than others. How hard it is to put it in its place. From the ego come our attachments and aversions, those things that support the ego. And think how our karma pulls us to and fro, how that affects attachments and aversions. And how we might justify that as well. Well, it's my karma, as if we can't do anything about that. And consider those concepts that help us deal with the ego. So with attachment and aversion, we can practice equanimity. Loving kindness and compassion. And how we use mindfulness not just to develop concentration in our meditation practice, but in our daily awareness, our ability to be spiritual practitioners and step back and observe what the ego's up to. Checking, always checking, giving us that space to check, observe, reflect, and change. So while we're reflecting, consider what you might bring to the discussion. There are a couple of pointers. One is, which of these practices has made the biggest impact on you over these weeks, and why, if you can say why, and how you've been using it, so we can benefit each other with our own practice. But also perhaps a question, something that's there that you feel needs addressing or answering, that doesn't fit right now, isn't clear right now. It would be wonderful if each of you can bring something to the discussion. Help me save my voice from disappearing altogether. As well as exercising your self-confidence in the Dharma, in your own practice. Okay, so let's come out of our meditation gradually when you're ready. Okay. So let's see how we go with this. Let's start with the takeaways. What you're taking away. You know, what the main point, what's been, you know, sometimes you're in teachings and you can listen and you get it, and then suddenly it's almost like you get this, your spine tingling moment where you, a little realization. It's a mini realization. There's something shifts. You can hear it again and again and again. Very common. The Lamas talk about this. Just sometimes it's like the mind has been softened so much it's finally able to digest a point. Yeah? Might not always happen in teachings, but it often does. That it's as if you hear it for the first time properly. It shows how dense our egos are, really, because so much of it is kind of coming at you, and you're going intellectually, you're going, oh yeah, that makes sense, but it doesn't hit you. Doesn't hit you until one day it does. So if you've got any of those, that would be brilliant, or any examples where that's happened to you. So who's going to start off? I hate to pick on you, but I will. Barbara, you're in the top corner, so I'm going to go clockwise. Anything from you? Don't forget to put your speaker on. No, she's thinking away there. Or does she think I'm talking to the other Barbara, who's just a black square at the moment? Yeah.
I wasn't sure, Ondy, which Barbara you were
referring
to.
Barbara, for whatever reason, it's her own business. She might just be having a bad hair day. It's blacked out at the moment with mucka. So, but I will come. Oh, there she is.
You got that right. It's a bad hair day. You got that right.
Bad hair day. Okay, let's start with Barbara Burkhard. There we go. What's going on for you? What are you taking?
For me, this series has been really, really good.
Good.
a lot of reminders. And I think the thing that is most helpful for me are two things, is really focusing on equanimity.
Mm.
And the basis that we all want the same thing in our lives. It doesn't matter who we are, what our situation is, we all want and are trying to achieve the same thing, and that's happiness and to avoid suffering. And that really is helpful to me when I observe other people or observe myself doing things that are not what we would want to be doing, behaving in a way that we wouldn't want to be behaving. We're just trying. That's our way of striving.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
really been super helpful for me. And then the other thing is that all beings have been my best friend, my parent, and probably all of those through the course of beginningless time. And that is helpful for me when I see other people and think, you know, that could have been my daughter 5 lifetimes ago. That dog could have been my dad 16 years ago. Things like that. I think about things like that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So those two things are things that really help me to see other people in a different light, in a kinder, more compassionate light.
Which is the purpose. Yeah. Does anybody want to add to that? Specifically what Barbara's been saying?
And also that we all experience the same thing. We may feel like we're all alone. We may feel like we're the only person in the world that's going through this. But for the most part, we all are experienced or have experienced, at least in this lifetime or in the many lifetimes before, the same.
Anyone else on that point? Vanessa, you're smiling.
Yeah, I just like the dogs. I like animals.
Well,
Animals make me happy.
well, we can pick up on that point, can't we? How you know, we can easily have compassion for an animal because they can't speak. We can't really get their personality. They're not cursing us or deliberately giving us a problem, but we find it much harder to be compassionate towards human beings who are able to express all these emotions. Yeah. What is it about dogs, Vanessa, for you?
They're unconditional. They don't talk. So we tend to give them more love than we would to people. But they're just, I don't know, they're just so cute. And then they're happy and unconditional.
Mm. That's interesting, that word unconditional. So that they're not really picking out, they might have a master or mistress, but generally whoever they meet is their friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a kind of a quality, you know, when we see qualities even in animals that we like, it's very good to remember that quality, that very quality you're seeing in even an animal is something you aspire to have because it's making you happy. You're just taking that attitude, you know, that if we see a person or an animal, for instance, you know, if you see like a Rottweiler dog that's very vicious, you don't like it, yeah? Or you think, oh, they've been trained to be really vicious and you're scared. And then it's useful to think, yeah, that is an unattractive quality that I don't want in myself. You use your feeling for even an animal as a way of reflecting what you want to aspire to in yourself. So, you know, when you're smiling at the dog, you're smiling because you love that attitude of being unconditional. It's something you want to develop in yourself. It's an interesting way of using, you know, when you see, oh, that's so cute, they're so lovely. The reason you love it is because you want that. You want to be that. You want to be that. You recognize it as good. Yeah. Okay. Any more comments on equanimity? I've written down, wanting the same thing, all beings as mother. Yeah, it's that whole thing of the ego is separate and cut off in a fortress. When we do taking and giving, we have the ego as the big black rock which surrounds our Buddha nature. And when we breathe in being suffering, it cracks that open and destroys. So if we can remember the ego as a black rock, especially when we're feeling really, you know, harsh, hard, cut off, disliking, depressed even, because that kind of cuts us off as well, then any practice that we can do to crack that open, to get some light out, will enable us to have equanimity and recognition of all beings as being the same. Because as Jayla said, it's, you know, recognizing this, we're all the same. And that's a real tricky one, because we look on TV or any kind of media, and we see incredibly beautiful, successful, wealthy people who appear to have everything. And the more you look at them, not because you want to find their problems, because that makes you feel better, but when you really look at them, or you find out about them, or you think about them as human beings, it doesn't take long before you get to their suffering. It really doesn't take long. Especially hard to lose what everybody else admires as well. You're on display. If you really value your looks and they have got you success, then aging is going to be really tough. Really tough. Because you're hanging on to, you have an attachment to your looks because it is bringing you worldly happiness, which is impermanent and shallow. It's not a deep sense of self. It's a very superficial sense of self. So for sure they have, in conventional terms, wonderful karma. You know, they've earned this beauty, this wealth, this talent, this success, whatever it is that you see, and perhaps have a bit of like, oh God, I wish I, you know, had half of what they've got or whatever. Yeah? So that they have earned that. But unless they have a spiritual outlook on life, at least, unless they have the view of emptiness as taught in the Dharma, in the Buddha Dharma, and compassion, then their suffering is huge. We would liken it to the suffering of the gods. You know, you could say that the wheel of life, you know, the wheel of life shows the different realms of existence. And we see them in Buddhism as being separate, if you like. So the gods are in their own realm and they're enjoying these incredibly long lives and all this hedonistic experience, and then at death, boom, nobody wants to know them, yeah? and the hell beings, there's this place somewhere where they're all being burned or frozen. We see them as somewhere else, but we can see that. And the lamas would definitely say, there are these realms of existence, but we can also see that in our own experience of samsara, in this desire realm. We can see the gods and goddesses in the movies. We can see them. There they are. And they're also managing to hold age at bay with whatever they can muster. Yeah. And yet then you hear about, or suddenly you stop hearing about them. And then maybe a year or two later, they're dead. They've gone. Think of what they're letting go of. So no genuine deep Dharma, happiness, fulfillment there. And if they do, then that's fantastic. That's fantastic, because they're recognizing and able to also practice as people progressing on the spiritual path. So I don't know how did I get onto that? Oh yeah, just sort of recognizing this whole thing of, seeing everybody as wanting the same thing. Everybody and every being wants exactly the same, and every being suffers from the various fears, untimely death, sickness, or all the sufferings identified by the Buddha. Old age, we could spend a month on old age, especially when you're old and you're experiencing it. Yeah. So, and sickness. I was listening this morning, something on the radio about a man who's 1 year old had a tumor the size of an apple on his brain. An incredible, powerful story. Rob Delaney, he's an American comedian, but he's made some stuff over here, and he's written a book. I forget the title of it, but it's about the severe illness. I don't know what eventually, I'm still listening to the story. I don't know what happens to him, but a 1 year old keeps describing as this beautiful child. And then suddenly the beautiful child can't even eat anymore because of this tumor on the brain. Has to have everything through a tube. Doesn't matter who you are in society. We just don't know what's around the corner. That's the thing, no certainty at all. So that's brought up a ton of stuff, Barbara, I think. And Sheila, this whole, we want the same thing. So never think however anybody is, how awful they are, how dogmatic, how egotistic, how trumped up they are. There's a hint there. That they're not suffering. They are. They are tremendous suffering going on, trying to hold on to status, worldly goods, looks, youth, power, everything that creates the ego. Yeah, all that holding on to the externals is what creates the solid ego. So we can have all those things, and remember, this is a very important teaching. Lama Yeshe would always say, it's not that you want to give up the ice cream. That's not what renunciation is. It's not giving up the ice cream. You can eat as much of it as you want. You just get rid of the attachment to it. The attachment meaning that you are expecting happiness to come from the ice cream, which is why we keep wanting more ice cream. We can experience the wonderful taste of any of these worldly things. You can have status, you can have looks, but don't get attached to them. They're not you. It's ego identity that your karma has created. Oh, goodness me, I said I wasn't going to talk. Listen to me. Okay, let's go on to somebody else. Get carried away. Okay, some other points. Who shall we have? Somebody come up with something else. Kim.
Yeah. Well, Ondy, I just want to begin by saying how much I appreciate you as a teacher, your style of being so honest and open.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, very, very grateful for you for that. And I think in this course, when we discuss karma, the delayed karma, the instant karma, I found that very, very impactful. And especially when we talk briefly about how karma removes victimhood. I mean, that is powerful. For me, that is very powerful, and I'm still meditating on it, and
That's
that
great.
it's so easy to blame our, instant or past karma. But also I'm grateful when we talked about, I mean, I am studying Buddhism right now, and my karma has brought me to be able, it has brought me to know you.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing. And how does the thread continue in our next lives? I mean, hopefully, if I get a human rebirth, that I will be able to pick it up again. But
Yes.
I don't know how that works. Is it 10 lifetimes? Is it never? I mean, obviously, I've been exposed to Buddhism in past lives, but it's never picked. I've never picked it up. It's never resonated until now. So
Until this life.
Yes. How do we make the link?
It's very interesting, isn't it?
It is. And I guess I just don't want to wait 50 more lifetimes to be able to progress a little bit more.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything they want to say at this point? Because you know what will happen if I start.
Go, Ondy, go.
Well, I think it was somebody, we were talking generally about karma, but it was one of you who said, so there is no victim. It might even have been you, Kim, who kind of made that connection, went, oh,
Yeah.
okay, so there is no victim. Yeah.
Right.
So if we just consider the nature of consciousness, so everything, they say, don't they? I mean, there are sort of talks about near-death experiences that people have, and that when they believe that they're dying, that their whole life flashes before them, that there is a timeless nature. So you would think for your whole life to flash in front of you, and you're I don't know, however you old, middle-aged or whatever, some of these stories go, is that would take a long time, but it doesn't. So we're living in a quite rigid idea of the structure of our life, what is past, what is present, what is future, what was long ago, what is tomorrow. We live with these concepts, don't we? Which keep us in this structure of, well, how can we have been born countless times? Because when you when you read what the lamas say, I've got a feedback. Is anybody else getting this, or are you okay? I can speak through it, but I'm just, you're okay? Okay. Because when the lamas talk about it and they say, you know, that if you cut the earth up into juniper-sized berries, you know, that would still not give you the number of times you have been reborn. So we think, because of our structure, well, I can't even remember last month. Can't remember much of what I did yesterday. So how is this having an effect on me? Nothing is lost on consciousness. It's like you've got zillions of post-it notes of every little event. And that is backed up by people who have near-death experiences and say that their whole life, you know, all the different, the sounds and when they were babies, and it just kind of passes them by. So if that's just in one life, we can imagine that in countless lives, there's one of those instances is going to be fired up by an event in this life. Suddenly it's put on the burner and boom, we make a contact. It's crazy, really, because we spend a lot of our time looking for connections. And if we just trust our karma, they'll happen. You know, the connections we need will happen. And if you make powerful prayers, may I always meet the Holy Dharma. May I never be separated from my teachers. You're making, it's like a fresh stamp, isn't it? You know, it's going to look very bright. It's going to be big and deep. It's not like it's faded out. You're making a strong vow. And so I have every confidence that when we meet the Dharma, we meet it again and again and again, until enlightenment, because it's the stamps on our consciousness. You can't remove them. But of course we have to take care of this consciousness, because if we get lost in our precious human rebirth, and we all do, because the world is very seductive. It's highly seductive, so never feel guilty, because everything out there is dragging you into it. You know, or we're ill and we can't be asked, or whatever's going on in our life, or we meet someone, we have a fabulous love affair, you know, and we don't come back to the Dharma until it ends. whatever happens, and you think, oh, I knew this would happen. this is what the Dharma says, you know, whether that ends or they die or you get ill or whatever changes the intensity of those moments. You know, I do have this strong confidence that I can see in my own life that you are creating the cause to have the Dharma. You practice the Dharma, you teach, like myself, then you will get opportunities to teach again. You can see that in ordinary life. So if you do it with the Dharma, for sure, you've also got the protection of your teachers and the Buddhas that you pray to. It's not like they're going, oh, well, I'll stick around to help them. It's just like, that's the cause. For sure, they're going to come again, for sure. Don't doubt it. Don't doubt it for one moment. Don't worry about it.
Thanks, Ondy. That's very helpful.
And just say in your prayers each night, you know, may I always meet precious teachers. It's one of the prayers anyway. I can't remember which one. It's probably in most of them. May I always meet precious teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And it will happen.
Yeah. Thanks,
That's
Ondy.
what
That's
we-
very
That's
helpful.
what we need, isn't it? We need the teachers. It's the Dharma, remember? Not them as charismatic, gorgeous people. We need what they're teaching.
Mhm.
It's the Dharma that we take refuge in. I'm doing a weekend on refuge in February in Santa Fe. That's there's a weekend course, and that will come into that. It's this idea of our refuge, because it's until enlightenment, not just this life. Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
I was thinking about what you were just talking about. I was thinking about not too long ago, and I kind of had a textile kind of metaphor for it, and the idea of like this weaving, like, you know, all the decisions in my life have like woven this kind of tapestry for what I am right now. And as that's going on, right now, you and I are weaving something together. And all of my lives, I've been weaving myself in some way into a greater whole. And I thought about, this concept of karma, and it's like, if that's actually a way to look at it, is we're a whole, and I'm kind of weaving myself as part of this web that doesn't have a beginning and doesn't have an end, then if I attach myself to, I know attachment isn't a good word in Buddhism,
No.
but if I attach myself to the good things, like if I watch my speech and my behavior, then I'm kind of using those, they're like fibers that I'm connecting myself to goodness with. And the more tightly woven I am to what I think is good and whole in the world, it's going to be harder to kind of like detach me from that in my next life. Like I need to fasten myself to that as tightly as possible. And there's going to be a fray and a knot, or, whatever, like I said, in textiles, whatever, I'm not an expert in textiles. So, whatever happens, but the majority of it has to be me somehow like fastening myself to what I want more of. And so if there is a karma and everyone has been my mother, that I'm already somehow connected into that. And my next life should pretty much be well written, because the pattern is already established across all these lives. So I just wanted to share that, because that's what I've been thinking
beautiful
about.
metaphor. Beautiful
Thank you.
metaphor. It's a teaching. It's lovely. Makes it very vivid. And yeah, that's beautiful, Barbara. This idea of the weaving going on, because it's also this idea of there's no beginnings and endings.
And so all of these teachings, when I come to be with you and the other people in this group, it's like, it's so enriching. And it's kind of hard to say, oh, well, when you said this or when somebody said that, because it's this larger whole
All of
that
it.
just
Yeah.
kind of surrounds me. And it's so important. And I can't put my finger on it, but I can just say it's really important. So thank you for this.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, you're bringing that wisdom and that recognition of what it all is in your life. And I sort of had a vision of you sort of flying through the air with your arm attached to this big wing of cloth, You're sort of not letting go. It's fantastic idea. Great. Who haven't we heard from? Erica, have you got anything to, sorry to put, but anything?
Okay. Yeah, I was I think mostly thinking of how sometimes our ego prevents us to understand other people's point of view, and sometimes people don't have the same understanding that we have, the same like the full picture of things sometimes, and we sometimes expect them to have that, and this is sometimes our egos in our ways, you know, and that makes it erode like the relationships, makes it erode trust in people trusting us, and things like that. I think that's the most significant thing that I took from everything, is trying to understand. And not that I'm there, but I'm just
No,
it's
that's
just a beginning of understanding that.
No, it's really important, because that's when we recognize that, you know, the more we invest in somebody, say, the more attachment there is, the bigger the ego. That's a really good way of looking at it, is that we think that, oh, you know, for instance, in a romantic relationship, oh, I love you, you love me, we'll make each other happy. Such an investment and such a pressure on that person to provide you. And we can see that the ego is really huge in a situation like this, because they're taking from you and you're taking from them. Whereas the more successful relationships are ones that just allow the other to be. Really, really, really tricky, because we're with them so much and we identify ourselves through them as well. I am the person that is loved by so-and-so, or we become the Mrs. or the Mr. of a relationship, or whatever, the partnership. So that's why relationships can be so difficult, because there's so much pressure to get from that other. And then the aversion becomes very strong for the same reason, because the ego is suddenly let down. The ego is slapped in the face, and that source of identification suddenly gone. Completely lost. You can get the people who can be completely lost for years. And this goes with grieving as well, grieving the loss of somebody that you've identified with so strongly. So, you know, managing a relationship, keeping your own identity and sense of space and freedom is a very, very difficult thing. Thank you, Erica.
But also not expecting somebody to, keeping your identity, but also not expecting somebody to create, or somebody to take care of you, or to meet your needs yourself, to create the things that you need to go into a relationship with those needs intact already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is we need a sense of self-reliance, that, you know, we can provide ourselves with our own needs when we go into relationship with another person. And the more needy we are, is that what you meant?
Yes, because I don't think it's fair to expect somebody to meet these needs.
Yeah.
All of the needs.
Yeah.
Because we should be able to provide a good chunk of them ourselves. You know?
Yes. Yeah, because it's lovely to have somebody there who you can speak to. But if you're constantly, you know, vomiting your needs at somebody, eventually they can't take it. And then the aversion arises, and then you lose that. So actually, and sometimes we can get relationships where that's encouraged, because people want to be needed. You know, I'll stand there for you. Let me be the one And that, in a way, you think that's a good thing, but it's not, because they're taking away your self-reliance. And they cannot promise you to always be there, because anything can happen to them. So this is why it's such, it's the biggest problem in society, relationships staying together and working. And yet we just, go to it like moths to a flame, don't we? Oh, somebody's going to make me happy. Really, really tricky. So, but also we can learn so much from these partners in good times and bad, especially in bad times. We can learn about ourselves through being with one other person so much. So it can also be a great opportunity for learning. Okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about? We just
No, I've
Vanessa.
I've had a lot of bad. I think one reason why I gravitated towards Buddhism is because I had a lot of bad experiences with romantic relationships, as well as personal family relationships. And it's comforting at the same time, kind of like, I don't know, I hear about kind of like the attachment, the bad part of relationships. But yet, at work and life, people are always talking about being in relationships, and there's so many people in relationships. And then when I go to a Buddhist teaching, it's like, there's attachment involved. But I just find it I guess, curious in that respect. And when I do find myself in a relationship, which hasn't been a long time, I just notice I kind of take a break from the Dharma.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And the last relationship I got out, I kind of felt like I had to readjust back into studying and doing my meditation, because it distracted me from it. So yeah, that's, I guess, my thought in terms of this meeting.
Well, we're all different, and that might be absolutely right for you, which is often the way of somebody who chooses the celibate way of life for that reason, to become a nun or a monk, or just to be, so that they can study, just to be, they don't even have to be a nun or a monk, but they just choose that the Dharma is their love, the love of their life, and they're going to go down that route. But we can also see relationships and having family as being absolute wonder beds of opportunities for working with the ego. Yeah. So there I wouldn't like to say there's a right or wrong way. It's just awareness, mindfulness, and using whatever situation you're in to practice the Dharma. And we can definitely practice, looking at attachment and aversion and the work of the ego within a relationship. Yeah? I think what can be tricky, what I've seen in others through my life living in a Buddhist community, is that Buddhism teaches non-attachment. And so sometimes if you're in a relationship with another Buddhist, there isn't the same kind of commitment, because there's always a sense that they've detached, they're slightly detached, and they recognize non-attachment. So I used to say, you'll laugh at me, and this is not a good thing to say from a Buddhist teacher, but I used to say to my kids, don't get a Buddhist boyfriend or girlfriend. They're absolutely useless at being romantic and loving. If you want romance, forget them.
That's true.
Instead of encouraging them to have, because so many of them don't quite get it right and want the physical, want the romance, but at the same time, they're being pulled by Buddhist beliefs in non-attachment. So yeah, dodgy one that. So that might also be what you experience, Vanessa, is that
Yeah.
balance, you know,
Exactly.
back to seriousness. Okay, well, it has been a joy. It's been fantastic, and I don't know if I'm going to see. I'm presumably when I'm in Santa Fe, even if you're not there, they offer Zoom connections with their teachers. Yeah. So anyway, it will be lovely to be kind of in your heartland, really. Find out what it's all about. I'm very excited. So have a lovely Christmas. You all celebrate that, don't you? Yeah. And wonderful new year. Let's hope we get through all these crazy problems in the world. And this time next year, we're in a different space again. I learned a lot. I was thinking that while I was meditating, that without students, I wouldn't learn. It really teaches you so much. So thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for hosting.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. See you in February. See you then.
Yes, see you in February.